Here we are again. It's a Tuesday morning. It is, I believe, 7:30 in the morning, and I really wanted to do this particular video because I feel that I wanted to share some of the background on why I decided to do a PhD and sort of my thoughts and how I came up to making this decision. And so when people ask me, why did you decide to do a PhD? And, I would have to sort of separate this into three different explanations. The first one being, you know, I knew that I wanted to learn and pursue knowledge for knowledge's sake. And I felt that research was, you know, something that I was keen on doing, especially since my undergrad, since my master's degree. I think, starting a PhD at 32 is definitely a big life decision because typically the average PhD um, student takes about 5 to 7 years. And, you know, that would mean I'd be anywhere around 38 to 39 years old once I'm done. But the cool thing about the PhD and this particular program is that because I am doing it part time, it's something that I get to do alongside um, my normal daily activities and just my normal average day life. First, so that's the first reason because I don't want to stop learning. Education is a lifelong journey, and so I want to be able to have that for the rest of my life. Second reason being of why I wanted to do a PhD is, it's a career move. I think in the past decade, with data science, machine learning, AI transforming the landscape of different industries, the technologies that are being used, the evolution of technologies, and how people are adopting these technologies. Take a look at ChatGPT, take a look at all of the infusing of different AI and all of our different technologies, many areas that AI is taking over, and it's actually impacting our lives. And so, with the advent of AI, that meant jobs have been changing, especially in the industry that I'm working in. When I work in tech specifically as a data scientist, and the data science role has sort of been evolving and shifting over the past decade. I started my data science career back in 2015, just after I graduated with my master's degree in economics. And I didn't think I would be a data scientist. I didn't even know my career would go in this direction. But over time, the data science career has required, a master's degree, statistics, mathematics, computer science, an ability to program, an ability to read research, especially when the technologies are evolving quite rapidly. And so being able to um, adapt to these changes fairly quickly was very important for a data scientist, I would think, in the past decade. That trend has sort of continued, in my opinion, where if you take a look at a job listing for a data scientist, especially for some of the bigger corporations, for some of the bigger tech conglomerates, you'll find that a minimum qualification in education is a PhD. And having worked as a data scientist amongst different teams, different management, different compositions of education and backgrounds and walks of life on my teams, I could tell that, there's definitely a baseline requirement of knowledge in coding, mathematics, statistics, but most importantly, it's that research aspect. And because, you know, at the heart of it, data science, as the term is called itself, the science aspect of it is you got to keep iterating and discovering what works and what doesn't work in terms of automating or making business decisions, insights, analytics. We live in a world now where access to that kind of information needs to be done almost instantaneously, almost immediately. And the only way we could do that as humans is if we're able to program or create AI models, machine learning models that can do it for us. And so, you know, it's still evolving. And that's what's crazy about this is that I'm deciding to do a PhD now, but who knows how AI and machine learning is going to evolve in the next 5 to 7 years. But all I do know is that the ability to research, the ability to be a scientist, and the ability to think critically about every little detail that's happening with when designing a product, when designing a software, I believe is what a PhD is going to prepare me for. And it'll only benefit me, I think, because I almost have 10 years of experience as a data scientist and just seeing how things have gone throughout my career. This will only benefit me, especially if I decide to, you know, move up the ranks into leadership, especially if I want to lead data science teams. You know, in my opinion, like, sure, a master's student can have the best leadership skills, and many do decide to terminate their degree at master's and then go into industry, and they can be the most amazing leaders for a team of PhD researchers that are trying to design the next wave of AI technologies. And that may work for some companies, but I have found that it sometimes it doesn't work for other companies because there is that culture of reporting to someone that has a significant amount of education that you can learn from, that you can bounce ideas off of from. And I've been in situations where there was that bias used against me because I wasn't a PhD or because I wasn't a worker with a PhD, but my manager had a PhD. Immediately, I was viewed as someone who didn't have the right skills, the right critical thinking skills, the right ways of how to approach a problem at work. And so there are these cognitive biases that occur in the industry, especially in data science, and it can occur for a myriad of reasons, right? Like, you know, what I hear through the grapevine is that PhDs tend to be very siloed, or they tend to be very knowledgeable and experts in their domain of whatever they studied. And that tends to lead them to be very individualistic, very critical, and very harsh sometimes on others. And so this isn't me like trying to criticize PhDs because I've worked with many brilliant, amazing minds before, and those are the kinds of people that I looked up to. But you also have to realize that the opposite rings true, where you'll have PhDs who may not be the greatest leaders, but they are, and in fact, they are in leadership positions because of the wealth of knowledge that they have and how they approach tackling problems. And so this is, all needless to say that this is a very important career decision for me to work towards a PhD. Um, I was very aware of what I was getting myself into. A PhD requires a lot of publications. It requires you to go very, very deep into a subject matter, whatever that may be, but also trying to uncover what hasn't been researched yet in the literature. And it's interesting. I've talked to a few friends who are working on their PhD or who have their PhD already. And sometimes you are the subject matter expert global in the world, especially in the Western world. That's a lot of pressure, considering that you might be one of 20 people in the world who are actually experts at your field, and you are the go-to person. One other thing that I wanted to add to this question about, why did I want to do a PhD? the career move, it's also because it opens up opportunities, you know? The industry has changed so much, especially in academia, where you gotta have a lot of publications in order to be even considered for tenure track associate professorship. Um, I kind of like the idea that there is that potential doorway for me to enter if I ever wanted to go into academia. At this point in time, it's kind of like a dangling carrot in front of my face, but it doesn't really interest me as much because you got to write a lot. You got to perform research. You got to have a lot of publications. It's no secret that to be even considered or shortlisted as a potential fellow or associate professor, you got to have publications in highly ranked journals. And that doesn't sound very enticing to me, but especially because I'm already in industry working towards my PhD, I think I kind of have that path set out for me. So academia, it's an option, which is nice. But the other thing that I wanted to bring up was consultation. And so my research field is going to be in the adoption of AI technologies. And so as you can see, like AI is being adopted everywhere. It's being used by everyone. Think ChatGPT, think um, anything on your phone, asking your phone for, you know, anything through their AI system. And what people don't consider is the consequences of using this AI. For example, AI has taken over the telecommunications industry because when people call in to the call centers, um, you have AI that can easily respond to those questions, or you have AI chatbots that can easily answer your questions if you want like a refund or something like that, or to switch your plan. And so this is currently happening in our world. It is currently happening where AI is slowly replacing human capital in industries, but it opens up a can of worms of, are we being socially irresponsible by replacing all of these workers who now, it's tough to reskill, it's tough to re-educate, especially if you're older. Acquiring these skills becomes much more difficult, especially if the barrier to entry into AI, machine learning, engineering in general is very difficult. And I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out into the next decade, few decades. And, honestly, this might be me just being an alarmist, but, AI is here to stay. And now it's just a matter of how do we regulate it and how do we use it for good, as opposed to um, focusing on such the negative consequences or how do we circumvent them. So yeah, that's my second point. Career, it's a career move. Doing a PhD is very important for my career, my own career. And now the third point, doing a PhD, I had mentioned earlier, it's sort of my priority. It's sort of my preference to be able to be educated and learn on an lifelong, ongoing basis. And that leads me to think, doing a PhD helps me keep engaged with life, to feel like I'm working towards something. I sort of want to talk about this um, from throughout my history. I've 10 years ago when I finished my master's, I knew that I wanted to go into academia, or at least I knew there was that I would have that itch in the back of my head saying, okay, a PhD is an option. You have a master's, you already have one prerequisite into going into a PhD program. But, life is difficult. And I say that because, I come from a first generation Filipino um, immigrant family where I'm the first in my family to attend university, the first in my family to obtain a master's degree, the first person in my family to go ahead and try to obtain a PhD and entering a PhD program. And, you can, for all those financial fanatics out there, for those who are super interested in immigration, for those who are interested in demographics and social um, status, I didn't have much growing up, but I had just enough to be able to make it out in this world, especially here in Toronto. Growing up in Toronto, I grew up in a very large Filipino community in Toronto, and I almost felt like I lived under a rock because of, I went through the daily motions of going through education. I went to school, high school, everything that everyone does here when you are in Toronto. But what has set me apart from my peers is not only wanting to succeed and want better for myself and want better for my family, but to also, you know, go through the process of discovering like what is wrong with society, what are the things that I can do to help benefit society. And this is part of the reason why I really want to do a PhD as well, is because when you go out, I guess, into the public or onto the street, you know, you don't really judge people by, you know, what they know or where they come from. There's just people all around. But now when you start taking a look at social media, when you start taking a look at media, publications, articles, anything online, you start to wonder, like, you know, how come I can't see a representation of myself in the general public? And that made me question, like, what is, as someone who does come from a first generation Filipino family, um, I want to be educated, like, I want to see educated professionals who look just like me, who talk like just like me, or who come from the same background as me. And I find that there is a lack of that representation. And, don't get me wrong, there might be a few hundred that currently exist today here in Canada, maybe here in Toronto as well. I don't know the statistics. Maybe I should look that up later, but it's, just from anecdotally, when I walk into a classroom, when I walk into the streets, when I walk into industry, when I go into the office, I'm, throughout my 10 years in my career, I'm usually one of maybe two max Filipinos in the office, um, or I'm literally the only Filipino in the office, or strictly I'm the only Asian in the office. And this is just my personal experience in showing that representation matters. And I have even gotten to the part where, I am also coming from the LGBTQ community because I identify as a gay cisgendered man. And that's a whole other story. And just if I focus on being a representation for Filipinos, for those who look like me, and for those who grew up like myself, you know, I want to be able to say that for me going into this PhD and, doing research, trying to make an impact on the world, trying to contribute to the wealth of knowledge that is there, sort of like leaving your mark. I want to do that for myself because I feel fulfilled doing that, but I also want to be able to inspire others that it is possible, where I came from, we didn't have much, but all I had was the love and care of my family, my parents, and that was enough to keep pushing me forward, to keep edging me forward, to be curious, to want more for myself. And that's where it takes me now. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do a PhD. It's because I want to continue pushing the boundaries, pushing the legacy for myself, for my family, and for my friends, and in general, for everyone who can see themselves um, through how I've grown up. And so I would say that would be the third reason why I'm doing a PhD. Um, I haven't really talked about what it's like to be in cross-sectional marginalized communities, you know, being a gay man, being Filipino, being a first part of a first generation Filipino family. Um, so many intersections and so many um, different identities that I possess. And I'm at the cross section of what do I need to do to prioritize my well being and how I need to walk this world and how do I perceive it and how do people perceive me. And so I'm hoping that by continuing and doing these vlogs now that I do have a voice. I'm sharing my experiences, and I hope that it helps to give other people an understanding of where I came from and what I am set out to do. Um, and yeah, that's about it. Sitting alone in this classroom, it feels great to be able to just speak to everyone here on the camera. Um, but yeah, until next time, I'm going to come up with more questions that I can speak to on my next vlog. And please feel free to leave any comments. Feel free to like, subscribe if you enjoy this. But yeah, this is a diary into my brain, into my world. Um, and yeah, if you have any comments whatsoever, any questions about my experience, or if you are going through anything that might be similar to what I'm doing, please leave them in the comment section because I want to be able to interact with my viewers and be able to, um, you know, help where I can, provide advice or guide wherever I can. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope to catch you soon.